Hi there, welcome back to the channel and to this video. Right, what am I talking about today? Well, we're going to have a quick chat about 1 litre Ford EcoBoost engines. I've just been online and read an article, and in fact it made me grab the camera and do this now, because this is the first time I've ever seen Ford admit that they have a problem with their 1 litre EcoBoost engines in reference to basically the wet belt system on their vehicle. Now basically Ford's engine, which is probably one of the first out there really on mass production, uses what's called a wet belt system. So really most cars have a cam belt or a timing chain, but a cam belt is basically a rubber belt that's on the outside of the engine that runs the top half and the bottom half of the engine. It effectively tightens up the pistons and valves to open and close so they don't clabber each other. That is basically what a cam belt is effectively doing. Now Ford in their wisdom decided on this engine they were designing, which came out in late 2011, that they would keep this cam belt submerged in oil, which to be honest with you doesn't seem a particularly great idea. But nonetheless, they decided that it was the best thing for it, it was to be the most efficient way of doing it, and it would mean that the belt would last for a lot longer, and effectively you wouldn't have to change it for 150,000 miles. Yeah, right, okay. So the engine's been on sale for the last 10 years, and it has basically grown a reputation for horrific cam belt failures, along with other faults as well, but the main one being this wet belt actually failing far too prematurely. And basically what happens is the belt just degrades over time far too quickly, and all the bits of the belt ends up in the sump. It gets all clogged up in the strainer. In fact, we've seen this on a video I did recently when we inspected one EcoBoost engine in a Focus I had quite recently, where I showed you an example of what they can be like when they clog up. This is so common, and it is accounted for so many engines being destroyed. But Ford have never ever mentioned ever that there is a problem with those wet belt engines. They've admitted faults with other parts of the engine, where they've actually even gone and recalled and even had some goodwill to fix them, but they've never actually admitted it until now. So let me just quickly read you what they're saying. So I'll put in the credit here of the article that I found and the author of it. So it reads, for years now, owners of the Ford EcoSport and Focuses with the 1 litre EcoBoost engine have complained of motors failing on their own due to oil systems that clog themselves. It's been going on for a very, very long time. After the investigation, Ford and the NHTSA, which is a national safety body in America, found the cause, resulting in the Ford recalling more than 100,000 vehicles for the second time in 2024. Now the problem is focused on the 1 litre 3-cylinder engine. What EcoBoost engine is fitted in Fiestas, Focuses, etc. and the EcoSport. But Ford are acknowledging that the issue is only on the year 2016 to 2018 Ford Focuses and the 2017 to 2022 EcoSport. So effectively they're saying from 2016 to 2022 they've got a problem with those engines. These engines have developed a reputation for losing oil pressure as early as 50,000 miles, with mechanics disassembling them to find that the oil pickups are clogged by crumbled up pump drive belts, basically the rubber belt destroying itself. The problem was speculated to stem from issues with the wet belt system and tensioner, and the exact origins was finally confirmed in their report. The investigation found that the tensioner's gawking or RTV-like joint breaks down from vibration over the vehicle's life. So effectively the tensioner, which is holding the oil tensioner belt, there's two belts in the sump without boring you, the main drive belt and a little auxiliary belt that drives the oil pump. Both are submerged in oil, both are effectively wet belts, and both are tensioned, and it's that tensioner that's basically failing, and it's causing the belt to sort of catch around the casing and basically destroy the belt. This case allowing the tensioner arm to fall out of position. This can impact the balance shaft and casing, damaging the tensioner and straining the belt. Ford technicians have also speculated that this can lead to the loose of the belt's teeth, skipping over the oil pump sprocket, tearing them off and gathering in the oil pan. Effectively, the belt's just basically falling apart. This can cause a drop in oil or total loss of oil pressure, which can destroy or ruin the engine. Not kidding. This failure can also cause a loss of power while driving, and deactivation of the vacuum pump, which assists the brake. Effectively what happens is that the vac pump, which is on the side of the engine, it drives basically gives vacuum to the brake system, also gives vacuum to the turbocharger on it as well, because it has a great big whacking turbo on these EcoBoost engines. It pulls the solenoid open, they get all basically debris in them and stops working. And in fact there's even been an accident caused where a wet belt system's basically degraded, the belt's fallen apart, got into the vac pump, destroyed the vac pump, the brakes haven't worked, and then someone has then crashed. Now Ford say that the belt assembly isn't meant to be serviced until 150,000 miles. That's a joke, but often fails just outside Ford's 60,000 mile warranty. How convenient. Owners have sought recourse for a legal class action, and now they'll have some direct support from Ford, which says they'll recall and repair any vehicles involved where this tensioner is an issue. The service will of course upgrade the belt with one with a new material. This will involve changing the tensioner and upgrading the belt to a new material. So effectively what they're saying is that they're going to recall any vehicles out there and basically put new tensioners on them and put these new belt on, the new type of wet belt. Maybe this one will last a bit longer, who knows? Now that's all well and good that Ford are going to go out there and obviously recall these vehicles and get new tensioners and belts put on them, but it doesn't help you if you've already had a problem. You're not going to get any money back from Ford. If you've got a 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, maybe even 21 now, it's early, vehicle, and it's out of warranty, and you've had experienced this problem, you're not going to get anything back from Ford, because they're not going to come looking for you, knocking at the door going, really sorry, we know you've experienced this problem 4 or 5 years ago, and we said no, and you've had to pay for a new engine, and we'll reimburse you. They're not going to do that. They're only going to deal with the ones that are currently out there. They're basically just doing the bare minimum they need to recall these engines back, get them done, and then move on. So it doesn't help those who are already financially out of pocket, which for a design they've admitted isn't functioning correctly. And to be honest with you, Ford have got a little bit of form for this in my view, because this is what I've experienced over the years. These engines came out in like 2000, late 11, early 12, and to be honest with you, the first couple of years, nothing was really said about them because they're quite new. There wasn't really too many issues. But when you started getting 3-4 years down the line, you started hearing rumours, particularly from sort of Ford mechanics, dealers, who were buying these sort of newer cars then, as they were new, and they were experiencing problems with wet belt, cam belt failure going on them, overheating. There was a problem with coolant pipes, or what's called a decast pipe. They were a problem. In fact, Ford did actually recall them. And in fairness, in the early days, they were really good at doing that. They got them in. I think about 90% of them. I think I've put the figure here. About something like that were actually recalled and fixed, where they changed this pipe. It was basically a design flaw in the pipe, which is fair enough. It's a new engine. You're trying out obviously new things. You're going to have these problems and issues, and you basically just rectify and recall them. That comes part and parcel of new engine design. You're going to have these failures which you're going to need to resolve. Because these engines were experiencing not only these wet belt problems, but the early ones are also overheating as well, causing head gasket failure and losing water. Now, they thought they'd solved the problem with this pipe, which did solve one of the many issues that they were facing, but it didn't solve it completely, and they still were suffering with basically overheating, head gasket failures in particular, and of course this dreaded wet belt problem, which Ford categorically denied was any issue. Basically, we're putting it down to sort of poor servicing or not using the right oil, which definitely will have an effect on the engine, but that doesn't explain the ones that have been serviced correctly using the right oil, which still failed and clogged up as well. Now, the first time Ford actually did anything about these 1 litre EcoBoost engines, other than those early days with that pipe rectification they did on the decast pipe, was in about 2018. It was a goodwill scheme. Basically, if you were suffering from head gasket failure, loss of coolant, etc., and it basically destroyed the engine, take it into Ford, they'd diagnose it, and they'd give you an engine under goodwill and fit it for you. That actually was a scheme that was open until quite recently. I actually used that system on 2 occasions for some vehicles that I had, whereby head gasket had failed, water was affected, and one of them was like, took the plugs out, the spark plugs out, turn it over, and the water was sloshing out of the engine. That's how bad it had failed. But that scheme was available, and they were rectifying those engines. But again, it didn't cover the actual main issue that people were experiencing, which was oil pressure faults and cam belt failure because of the wet belt design. So to finally see today that Ford is actually admitted that its wet belt system is not all what it's cracked up to be, actually did make me laugh when I actually read it. I couldn't believe it, because we've known about this for years and years and years in the trade. But these engines are appalling. And it's not just Ford as well, by the way, these wet belts. All these wet belt engines are pretty much terrible. I can't think of really any that have actually been successful. They don't cause any of these problems, where the belts just effectively just fall to pieces and cause all these oil consumption and oil blockage problems. These wet belt systems, in my view, are absolutely just an appalling idea. The sooner they get rid of them and go back to a conventional sort of cam belt or chain system that's easy accessible to be serviced, the better. Because the actual 1 litre EcoBoost engine, in fairness to it, and I've driven many of them, is actually a very good engine to drive. 3-cylinder, turbo, charged engines, good on fuel. I get the principle of what they're trying to do, and it's great. I love the performance of it, but the reliability has been appalling from the offset. Now, hopefully, these latest revisions they've had, I think it's 2022, the new engine started, we can start to see, hopefully, some big changes and more reliability coming to the Ford EcoBoost engine. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on the 1 litre EcoBoost. Do you rate it? Have you had one? Has it been reliable for you? I hope it has. I don't say this to just be slag off the engine. I actually like the engine. I just wish it was more reliable. But let me know your experiences of them. If you've owned them or a friend's owned them, because there'll be plenty of stories out there, I'm sure. So thank you for watching this video, guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.